I don't know if I did well enough.
So COVID slowed it down. Found asbestos in places that were supposed to be asbestos. And then all.
Well, I don't have money.
costs. Like,
I didn't bring, I should always.
but it really was about more asbestos than they because like they like had planned for a ton of mitigation already and removal. They just kept finding it.
Okay, everybody, we're gonna get started here. And so Nick is going to put. Hang on 1 second. Sorry, this was mine, too much chatting while I was at lunch. Now I'm really holding everybody up.
Okay, I'll do another boat joke. How do you get into a secure port? You barge right in.
Much better than the song and dance.
So stupid, it's hilarious. I know, right? I've got plenty.
I'm losing my mind.
Has anyone seen The Last of Us on HBO?
Yes.
So then you guys have heard this one. I just caught up on it. I presented.
I haven't seen it.
So what did the green grape say to the purple grape? Breathe.
I gotta get, I've been stuck on Netflix. I'm not like, it was good shows for a while, but now I've run out, but I've been too lazy to switch. Cause I usually, I stop one and then I'll start another. Yeah. So it sounds like I need to go to HBO.
Yeah, you should be able to just click on it and.
Oh, yeah. I'm just thinking about how much you're.
I know, that's what I've been seeing. I never watched Severance, so, yeah, that's what happens.
Season 2 is gonna be more.
You didn't get it? Okay.
It's just a different, yeah.
I did, I watched Silo. I did, cause I had Apple
Yeah.
TV a while back. I like that. I like Wi-Fi too.
3 different ones. I never know which.
HBO has White Lotus that started.
They're useful because it was a dusking.
I love that. Yeah. I usually hang on for 2 or 3. Sometimes, yeah.
What's the other 2 seasons? Okay.
So I'm not gonna go.
You're like, so cool, cause it's summer.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was on.
Sorry, that was my fault.
And,
Gunstone is coming.
Hey Armino, which is where one of the
Having visions of being done.
Lotus films, yeah.
Alvarado.
Hi, my name is Nick Alvarado. I'm the Regional Navigation Manager for Florida, South Florida and the US Virgin Islands. And I apologize for not being on your agenda. Prior to the current landscape, I was in Fort Lauderdale at the Port Everglades Harbor Safety and Security Committee. And as you can tell, I'm not there. I'm here. And so as a result of that, I was able to attend yesterday's session and this morning's, barring the Port Everglades call-in. So there were 2 projects that I was aware of in the state of Florida that the Office of Coast Survey was involved or planned to survey, and that's the St. Lucie area here, the Polygon offshore, which was requested by the Service for Habitat Characterization. That is in the books. Whether it happens, be determined based on the current landscape. The other project that we have is the Isla Morada Snake Creek survey efforts. This was something that was requested 2 years ago by the Coast Guard sectors Key West because there was some shoaling happening on the south side. The Army Corps of Engineers did some surveys on the south side of the channel, the lower portion here.
Yeah, big fan.
So right down here, with some new systems that they were beta testing. Unfortunately, they didn't get the opportunity to survey the northern portion, and search and rescue Elamirada made that request to NOAA because this technically isn't under the Army Corps' purview because there's no channel framework there. So this is where NOAA's ability to survey areas that the Army Corps can't allows us to be nimble and provide that service to our stakeholders and the public. Again, that was supposed to be happening next month by a navigation response team for Nandina and Nandina Beach. But right now we're on a holding pattern. So as soon as we're allowed to travel, which should be whenever that executive order came out, 30 days from that, we're supposed to be hopefully going back to normal operations. So that's it. That's all I have. Sorry. Yes.
Yeah, so Nick, I noticed the area, not this one, the other one. It looked like that was in. Has any of that been coming, contractors would know, has that looked in my brain, the FSMI map and where they were gonna be contracting?
That's a very good question. And when the NIMS reached out and made this request, I don't think they were involved in the process that FCMaP came out with the.
Well, it would have been the FSMI.
FSMaP.
So they should go on the web, on FSMI's website, it's easy to
Okay.
find, and make sure that that area or a part of that area isn't contracted out, because those contracts are set.
Okay.
So, yeah,
I'll follow up with
yeah,
that.
for sure.
Any other?
Anything else?
And I think Fugro was the one that got that. They're not here today. Sorry.
You're fine. They're gonna do multi-beam and
Usually they do multi-beam. And they can do side scan or.
We did it with single beam years ago. And it's
Right, usually the Office of
Okay.
Coast Surveys protocols are multi-beam unless they're asking for something else. Yes, ma'am.
Malcolm Elliott online says regarding Jupiter Reef, that area should be under contract and probably already collected.
Good to know. Can I get an email, Elliot? Just go ahead and send me an email at nicholas.alvarado@noaa.gov.
I'll drop your email.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you for that, Malcolm.
Thank you, Nick.
Okay, now we are entering the interactive. After lunch, get your blood going. You guys are gonna participate. We're gonna talk. Online, we want. And also, Amber is on it.
The lights on.
Yeah, please.
Yeah, keep the lights on.
That was, I've
So
got,
you might want to get your phones out. We are gonna do a poll everywhere. There's a QR code for you. An address. You might want to get ready. And so it's, we're gonna play this game and whoever wins is gonna get a Wolpert calendar.
I got a.
I just wanted to see if I
I
could.
wasn't told.
Actually, no, there's no winners or losers.
The folks online, they'll win a free smiley face emoji from me in the chat.
No, Jeff Levin will send them a Wolpert calendar.
No, Rick will because Jeff will tell Rick.
okay, so I just wanted to, I know you guys have done a lot of these poll everywhere questions and I have as well, but I never really realized, Renee brought it up. If you have two words or that go together, you have to have an underscore. If you don't do the habitat underscore mapping, it's gonna show up in the word cloud as mapping habitat and
Separately.
it doesn't work. So we don't want that. You just have to have the underscore. If you want, I don't know, multi-beam, side scan, just then no underscore, there'll be separate words and that's all fine and dandy. So, Cheryl,
Okay,
take it away.
thank you. So we're gonna talk a little bit about data, but what we're gonna do is,
Do you want me to stay up here and click through it?
you can talk. Yeah, we talk. Let me talk.
You're good at
Thank you.
that.
Thank you. I'm good at that. And so, we're collecting all this incredible data, right? Incredible data. Never been anything like it. You know, California comes close. They collected it for different reasons. A lot of what drove that was seismic hazards, you know, offshore seismic hazards. But you know, when Florida got the money to do the mapping, it wasn't FDEP saying, oh, we really telling the legislation, oh, we really need the money to do the mapping because we need it to do this thing, right? It was more our friends who had lobbyists up in Tallahassee came and got a lot of the language that had come out of all the FCMaP discussions over the years and put that into language that got pushed up. So we have to thank our friends who had lobbyists up in Tallahassee. And that's really how the money came about. So there wasn't any thought process on FDEP's part in advance of what they wanted to do now that they had all the data. So what we want to do is play a game and start exploring what our entire stakeholder group or whoever is left remaining today, you know, what do you want to, what is the main thing you are going to do with the data? So the first word cloud, and this is a reminder of the benefits. So, there's a QR code.
So online can do this as well.
Yes,
And it will
please.
show up, so please
We
participate.
want online participants. So yeah, just again, underscore if there's multiple words. What are you planning on doing with data, with the FCMAP data? I know, you know, even the vendors, like what, you know, could you repeat mapping? You know, I mean, just whatever.
I still see people getting the QR code, so I don't
Yeah,
want
yeah.
to switch it over yet.
No, don't.
The register, right?
You don't have to, you can skip it.
It always takes me forever to get it.
Yeah, that's fine. I mean, you can also, it says you can text if that's easier.
Give me a chance to type.
Not Thursday now, have the hyperlink active.
Well, we can start looking at it.
I just wanted to make sure they had.
Keep adding if you're, it'll keep populating. Good, cool, okay, so now, oh. You can come in. All right, so I didn't want to just create a word cloud. I want to do a little bit more of a deep dive into a few of the topics in this word cloud, maybe the top 3 or something like that, right? And so obviously, I think even as it's tinkling around, habitat mapping seems to be coming right out on top, is the biggest one. And so now I want to ask, and I'll start with the in-room, but then I will go to online. I want everyone who put habitat mapping, raise your hand. Okay. So I want someone who raise their hand. There was 4 or 5 of you to tell me exactly how you're going. I mean, like, what is your habitat? Like, what's the habitat you're mapping? Do you want to do it? I'm looking right at you because I know these guys. You know, exactly like how you're going to use the data. You're going to download it from the FSMI website, and then
We already have the Florida Unified Reef Map. That's been a product that we've put together for a long time. So we'd love to update that with the newest data. Right now, it's a FrankenMap with data from all sorts of sources going back to 2005. So it'd be great to have one snapshot in time of what it looked like and then compare changes from our old map to the map from the new data.
how old some of the oldest data?
2005.
Yeah, that's ridiculous. Okay, great. All right, so now, but I want to go one step further, and I'd like to say it, this is an exaggeration. who would die if you didn't get the data?
The corals.
Okay, that's fair enough, right? So that's what I've had to, now you're getting the gist of where I'm trying to get. I want real stories. Because what we want to do is start really convincing people why we need, well, the corals are dying, but we don't know where they're dying and which ones are dead because we haven't mapped the area since 2005. Did you want to add anything, Renee?
Yeah,
I'm gonna jump
so,
online, but go ahead.
yeah, and just as an example, we've had a disease rage through the
Right.
coral. So the geomorphology, the structure will be changing
Yeah.
as well.
Yeah.
And for those types, anything with structure, these metric maps are really critical. Fisheries science depends heavily on this. There's massive efforts to like postage area stamp sizes, postage stamp area size, acquisitions all over the Gulf, and this is all side scan. So this is now a much more comprehensive and almost synoptic look that gives us a great snapshot.
Yeah. Cool. Okay, now somebody online, you can raise your hand or say me in the chat. Who online put habitat mapping and are willing to do a deep dive? How about that?
Feel free to unmute.
No, I'm not going to accept nobody. Well, I'll stand here forever.
Feel free to unmute yourself.
Yeah, you're probably on mute, whoever's trying to talk.
Get a free calendar, maybe.
So nobody online
None of them put
habitat mapping.
They might have put something else, so.
Oh, okay. Fine. All right, so.
Can I add one thing to that?
Yeah.
Well, on habitat before we move on from it, I think it's great that the backscatter is also being collected. We know that there's a lot of unknowns on how well that can inform, but that is something valuable and the ancillary information for mapping efforts, for habitat mapping efforts. So that's something that we hope to be able to get access to. That would be a data product that would
Yep.
be of interest to us as
Yeah.
well.
So let's see, can folks help me out? Do you think bathymetry or change analysis or modeling, which is biggest? All right, how many people want to in the room and online? You can participate online, you can raise your hand, you don't have to say anything. How many people want to explore further change analysis? Here, I'm so surprised. How many hands are up online? My question.
Jennifer wasn't craft racer.
Thank you, Jennifer. Okay, so change analysis. Then who wants to volunteer to explore that one a little bit deeper? Cheryl,
I'll volunteer,
thank you.
and a segue into my talk later. So changing bathymetry, especially in coastal complex areas, can affect modeling. So I even am getting another one there, modeling, which can really affect how we forecast any kind of flooding.
Okay. So better data for flood modeling.
Any kind of water level modeling, anything like
And
that.
so is that how you personally are going to use the data? Or you're just speaking for the community?
Speaking for a research team at USF.
Okay. So does this research team, who's gonna die? What's gonna happen if they never had the data?
I mean, anytime you can use data-informed models, you are better equipped to serve the products and services that come out.
And I'm gonna go to online. Jennifer, you raised your hand, so I'm gonna pick on you. Can you explain to all of us exactly how you're going to use the data? Or the change analysis?
Yeah, I guess the immediate one that comes to mind is the data from FSMI is the most recent pre-event data set for Hurricane Milton. So we'll be comparing our post-storm data sets to that to get quantities of beach volume change and offshore volume change. And then on all the time, we've got, data, LiDAR data sets back to 2004 for the Florida coast. And we're kind of developing a workflow to do, we call it multi-temporal analysis, but, a way to analyze, up to 12 or 15 data sets for the state of Florida for elevation change, shoreline change, and volume change. And we'll use that in the Corps of Engineers to look at, regional sediment management, help us identify sediment transport pathways, and, use it to support the beneficial use of sediments along the coast.
Then like the negative aspect, if the data were not available, wouldn't you just go collect them anyway?
It's always best to work together. Our funding restricted environment, I would say the Corps of Engineers National Coastal Mapping Program is probably about 6 years behind its schedule. To get a survey every 5 years for every piece of the lower 48. So, and I am a data geek as well. So more data is always better for me. And my coastal engineers would like new data every tide cycle if they could get it. So you always get more information out of more data.
Good. Thank you. Appreciate it. And the online participation. Let's see.
I have to change it.
Huh?
More for change.
More
we
for
move
change
on?
analysis?
And I want to tie it in because we talked about habitats and how it's obviously critical, but I want to point out there because I think it's been a very effective one for us, especially when we're looking to fund these types of things. When we think of our habitats, and I'll use reefs as an example, it's an easy one. Those are really also infrastructure. And yeah, with our inundation modeling, that's directly tied to economy and our coastal cities. Same thing with the reefs. I mean, they're protecting from wave energies, surge. They're protecting these huge metropolitan areas in the southeast. So understanding how these change because the corals are dying, structures eroding, we're losing that infrastructure, and I think EP's been pretty good about taking that angle, or had been. I think they still are. Something we need to think about as well.
Well, and communicating the relationship between the habitat mapping and change analysis. I mean, Jennifer's example is more about beach nourishment and understanding how our beaches are changing versus flood modeling versus coral losses and protection, coastal protection losses. That's good. Can we go to we want to do another one?
Go to the next
We're
one.
going to do another one. Another poll anywhere. Keep you guys awake and engaged. Maybe the people online will wake up.
Yeah.
The question is going to be, besides the data that you're going to download to use for whatever you were going to use it for on the FSMI website, what additional data do you have to do what you need to do? Get your job done, or you'll get fired. I don't like to get extreme, do I? And I would have loved to explore more of those, but we've got to keep moving. Give it a second. I see some people.
I keep forgetting they can see it.
Yeah, so, yeah. Oh.
I was gonna say, how many times is Anna putting in the response? Me. Send.
Hey. putting bathymetry, I'm gonna blame Rick.
Blame me. You can blame me for a lot of things.
I'm surprised because I just should have, because the metadata will be available, because that's a requirement of the vendors. How good is it though? Yeah, that's the question. Vendors can answer that. The meta, aren't you required to provide some pretty strict metadata requirements? Yeah. These guys are professional.
Oh, I wrote down notes.
I don't know how to use the metadata one, so I think I might go to some of the other ones, because I know the metadata will be available. I know how important it is, and it'll be there. So I'm gonna, the other two that are large to me are like topography and weather, so I'm gonna go with those two. So, weather maybe just only looks bigger because it's a little darker in color, but I'll start with weather. So who in the room, weather, in their word, cloud? All right. Who online? Put weather in their word cloud. Raise your hand.
Unmute.
No, wait, nobody put weather? How'd weather get there?
Computer gremlins. Clearly, nobody did it.
Nobody is playing the game right. Okay, who in the room put topography? Oh, come on.
Oh, we've got Jeff Daniels then.
Thank you. Yeah.
Good afternoon. Yeah,
Tell me
definitely put on.
exactly how you're gonna use topography.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, no, this is key for our work within USGS to build CONED, to integrate the topography with all that great bathymetry being collected by the Florida Seafloor Mapping Initiative. Obviously the uses are various with modeling and across, hydrology to geomorphology to, understanding the land slope into the water and so forth. So yeah, that's a critical layer for us.
Thank you. And what would happen if you didn't have it?
A great question. Through partnerships, hopefully we'd try and collect more of it. But I think that's where we need to have a key, engagement with partners and trying to continue to get that. But it would be difficult to do what we do without it.
Thank you. Anybody in the room? No, Renee.
Not topography, but I want to point out, if the ground truth people were a little more consistent, it would be cool. And I'm curious who else and what needs there are, because I'll just say for habitat mapping, we can't do anything with confidence unless we get out, and sampling's up there as well. I think that's also probably falls on. We can't map without going and actually seeing this. That means in water, in situ observations.
I'm just trying to look at how many of these are. Well, and somebody put ground and truth. They didn't give the
There's ground
hyphen.
truth, there's ground truth data.
And
There's about 5 actually up there.
so let's consider that a big one, and then we'll sort of launch into a little brief discussion, and then we'll move on. So for any kind of ground truthing data, who in the room put some aspect of ground truthing in their word cloud? Okay, awesome.
Yeah, kind of what Renee was saying, habitat classification maps, even if, for example, we wanted to use the bathymetry data to build those maps, having the ground truth data is useful to actually build the maps, especially for using like machine learning models.
Nice, yeah, that's a good one. And if you didn't have that, it would be high levels of uncertainty, and you wouldn't have anything to train the
Right.
Exactly.
So you lose efficiency, I guess. Anybody online,
We'll get it fresh.
any aspect of ground truthing into the word cloud?
See any hands?
So I guess this gets back to, this, just have a little discussion, so jump in, Renee, if you have any thoughts, but the reason why I wanted to go through this exercise, this is great because we can capture these word clouds and have them to, show and construct statements and that kind of thing, is really, that 100 million that was given to FDEP for mapping is unprecedented. And that a chunk that big is unlikely to come around again. However, we know that, I don't want to say, I hate to say the word, it's not useless, but it will not address the wheel of benefits, right? The full wheel of benefits, full spectrum of the things that can be done. If we don't know what people are using the data for, and if you don't have certain other data to go with it, right? And so to that, in order to tell the complete story, we can't just say we need to collect data because I needed to do my job, or it hasn't been updated in so long. We need to be able to tell the story of what we'll miss and who will be impacted. And I think that even drawing from this, we can start to pull out some of what will the economic losses be if we don't continue to do repeat mapping and to map to actually fully realize the products that are needed for people to do their jobs across the spectrum. That was a point of this. Does anybody at Florida comments or suggestions or other ideas? This would help wake people up, and man, you guys look as tired as ever.
You mentioned how difficult it would be to get this kind of funding again, but I guess another way of looking at it is the purpose in the pudding. We as the vendors, we provide this fantastic data. We create this product. It sells itself. The return on investment, I think, was it's like $28 million a year return on investment. So we know that is established. We know it could even be more than that. And as this technology continues to evolve and continues to grow, hopefully more states will see the benefits of this.
Yeah.
And it's not just a pretty picture. This is actual, tangible, usable products that everybody benefits from.
Yeah. For a while, I was pushing an initiative through GOMA, which is now GOA, for the idea of a GOMAP, right? So a Gulf of Mexico mapping program. So it's like Florida, like an FCMaP, but for the entire Gulf. And and Ashley Chapel was a champion of that. But it's just, other things got in the way, and we sort of pulled back on that. But, that concept is still floating out there. And I'd love to see it, frankly.
So say that money comes around again, what you say does, would you, based on this exercise, are you thinking of possibly extending it, including some ground truthing exercises with a mapping protocol?
Right, or side scan sonar, if that was what it was, or what's surprised, did that come up? Yeah, it's such stuff like, I'm surprised at that, or sub bottom.
Structuring it such that have one after the other, like.
Yeah, I mean, I think that would be prudent. I think that we're going to have wonderful maps, but there's going to be certain areas that we know don't change a lot, or we've identified that they probably aren't important habitats, especially on the West Florida shelf. I mean, areas are very important, but there's areas that maybe aren't, so. I mean, I think it would be worth considering. The reason why we only focused on bathymetry elevation data for the for FCMaP when we first started was we started doing the data inventory. Renee's folks started doing the data inventory, and we looked at this map, and it was like someone threw up all over the seafloor of Florida. So it was just little bits and pieces of everything everywhere and lines and this and that. And so it was just like, we gotta get, we gotta get rid of everything, but and focus on one, the common denominator.
Well, actually, so you sparked a thought, and so I run a lot of programs that bring scientists or bring people who aren't mappers to see to do their work, right? And one of the challenges that I have in working with non-seafloor mappers is their lack of ability to work with the kinds of data sets that we find in databases. So that's why this idea of a unified data set that's going to be provided, a product, as Rick said, that is going to kind of stand for itself. It will really help people improve their ability to do research, because otherwise they're going out there with, whatever the court says, resolution bathymetry that's publicly available, really, or, it's because they're not able to put together the data themselves,
Right.
or to work with the data themselves.
Right.
And so whatever we can provide for people to use as those base layers in different types of base layers, like backscatter is very useful for some of the work that these scientists do as well. Bathymetry is always really important, but those are going to be important courses that many people use afterwards.
Yeah, that's really an important point. What comes to my mind is there may even be people who go to wherever this ends up being housed, whatever that looks like at FGIO. And even though it's going to be a nice, easy access portal, they still really can't figure it out. It would be nice if somebody could offer, like, hey, if you really need the data and you just can't seem to figure out, you don't have the technical skills to even be able to get it down, we can help you. You know what I mean? And I don't know if that we can discuss that for FCMaP, as an FCMaP thing. That move on?
Yeah, no, sorry. Cheryl wanted me to get something in the chat. I was just trying to make sure it got done.
Something in the chat?
Sorry. No, it was just a change now.
Shared it.
She was just sharing something that Cheryl.
This is the bed back.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, whenever you're.
Does anybody else have anything else they want to consider contribute? The gist of the conversation?
Yeah, I'd like to add to Jennifer's point about repeat surveys to assess shoreline change in context of restorations, because sea level rises, storm impacts become worse. There's going to be more need for restorations, and states are going to start to demand repeat data.
Yeah.
Collections, inventory of available sediments, and compete with other states for resources and stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, our beaches are our livelihood, right? Like you've gone to Florida. Well, not in alligators, but. No.
Fishing.
Maybe some fishing. Carol, do you want to? Say anything?
No, it's the link to the cost benefit. It's out of the UK, so this is
Thank you.
from it.
Well, I was wondering where you got that return on investment of 28%, Rick. Is that this?
That was from the story map. I think it was from your story map. I'll just throw it right back
I
at you.
didn't think it was that high, but I remember 7-to-1 cost benefit
I
analysis.
think I went out to because I was at the district at the time, I think that was like the 2017, 2018 story map you put together. I think it was actually taken right from there.
We got it from somewhere else.
Oh, wow. You gotta find the source of that. I'm telling everybody 20.
Pretty sure it was Dewberry.
Not gonna help. I never did that, but.
Cheryl, what did you have?
This reference says 86-1
Okay.
ROI.
86-1, yeah.
Jesus.
Reference.
No, I want to see it. Yeah, that's awesome.
Awesome.
Renee,
All right.
take it away.
Thanks, Cheryl. This is nice. Didn't need to co-moderate because we don't have to run mics, so it's
I know, right.
be comfortable without having to speak. So I'm just going to set the stage here for the second part of this interactive discussion that we want to get feedback from you all on. Community practices should not be a concept that is new to any of us, and I'm sure many of us are in different communities of practice. In fact, you can really think of us, this FCMaP is, in a sense, a community of practice, or there's a lot of elements that are. So there's a nice definition of it in case you don't really have your head wrapped around it. But I think what I wanted to point out was just that I don't think that if you build it, they will come approach is necessarily the best here, which is why we wanted to come to the community and ask them, what do you need? What could we build upon what we've already created to better, better serve our community, our community practice. And again, I'm just greasing the wheels for discussion here, so I'll go through these. These will be pretty quick. So this is actually one of our 5, I think, items on our 5-year strategic plan, items, goals, objectives. And you can see here, we just fleshed out a little bit what we see this community practice being for us for FCMaP. So yeah, we want to build on that. We wanted to, especially now that we are past the not past, but the acquisition stage is wrapping up, and now we're talking about, what we can continue to do. I think you could probably even break down community practice into components. You have the acquisition and now, the synthesis stage. So thinking in those terms as well. And if you consider that there's, Eve, I think, has armies of students that are going to be ready to start working with this data, our community will likely grow. It should expand out. Yeah, so this is also on our hub. And because of our exposure to different communities, it will be great if you're in a community practice and you see something successful someone else is doing, that we can. Those are the kinds of things that we get out of. Some things that we could do, some of these things we are doing, where this is in a sense a workshop. We do webinars, could we do more? Is it too much? Discussion forums, that's something we don't have, I think can be very effective for communicating. Platforms for sharing information, sharing knowledge. Right now, the hub is more of a one-way avenue for communication. Do we need more platforms that allow the community to contribute directly? And I just put moderation on there because these things, I think it's important that you have some moderation, and that's a role that, we can play here at FCMaP. And then, really it's, who do I talk to? Who else is in the same boat as I am? I don't want to have to reinvent the wheel. I want to learn from others. I want to know what best practices we can share from each other. What, do you have a cookbook on how to go about doing this? Those kinds of things. Those are very valuable. They tend to be pretty program specific, and some of the procedures might be, but there's so much that will be valuable to someone else, especially if they haven't gone through that. So those are the kinds of things we'd like to, and if you know the other tools, those are the kinds of things we'd like to consider. Just as an example, some of the good ones, I think, Gulf of America Alliance, GOA now, that is officially changed. They have a really good one for, SAV, submerged aquatic vegetation, but seagrass, for mapping and monitoring. And it's a pretty active community. So again, I think the first slide had, what makes a successful community of practice. It really has to be grassroots. People have to be contributing to it and wanting to use it for it to really be successful. And that one I think is a pretty good example. We can use some of this. In that example, they use discourse as I think it's for most of the forum communication. So that's an example of a tool that could be used. NOAA's National Geodetic Survey, I'm not in that, but I've heard it's a good one. And then our GIO office also claims to have a community practice. I think they could probably build on it. They might actually build on it more. We can maybe work with them, collaborate with them on the needs. Okay, so again, just greasing the wheels here. We'll do a similar poll everywhere. And there's actually going to be 2 questions. I think we can probably do something similar. I like that. That was a great way. We do a word cloud and see what's bold, what comes out, and dig in a little bit. Yes. Okay.
What do you want to share and learn from each other?
Yeah, that's, sorry.
What do you want to share and learn from each other in a community of practice?
How do you get in without registering?
There's a button at the bottom there that says skip. return on investment. Yes, if we don't get a lot of feedback, then we're doing perfect. We don't have to add anything.
Well, let's just skip this. We know we're already doing everything perfect.
Assessing methods. Our online community, make sure you're also please contributing.
We have collaboration and then collaboration opportunities coordinated.
Yeah, if you guys see anything where the
Double,
spelling is the only
yeah.
reason it's not standing out. Yeah.
Using collaboration. Interrelevant, that's a very interesting one.
Go ahead. It looks like a few things definitely are standing out now. Lessons learned, collaboration, and data processing. Yeah, well, let's dig in on the collaboration. Obviously, that is a kind of a core thing in what we do. So I'm wondering if there's some more specifics on what we could be doing, or maybe a tool or something specific that we could be collaborating on better or more, or if anything is working well and we should continue focusing on it. Maybe I'll start with the hands who collaboration. It's bold and big and must be more cheerful.
Or collaboration opportunities.
Is that on there as well? Okay. Yeah, there's another one.
Anything to do with collaboration. You guys don't want to collaborate.
Anything specific come to mind? Anna, you mind if I pick on you?
Yeah, that's fine. I was thinking, as Cheryl was talking about moving beyond the acquisition into more of how are we going to use this, thinking about cases where we could use the data for collaboration rather than like the acquisition part of piece of collaboration. So whether that be, thinking about more use cases that come in and present, or more times where we can get together in topical groups that we're talking about different things that might be of interest. It could be ways to do that.
And I was thinking about it more in terms of data and product development collaboration, right? Like, hey, I need the backscatter process for this area. Well, I need the backscatter process for this area. Well, geez, maybe we could pull resources and get the backscatter process for that whole area, kind of. So that might be more coordinated than collaboration, but you don't find out you can't coordinate it unless you collaborate and know what people are doing.
So yeah, an avenue to identify opportunities for
Yeah.
collaboration.
Yeah.
Partnerships.
Is there anybody online?
Yeah, what about the online folks? Anyone see that as a priority, or something that would be important and useful to them? Have any hands up?
Oh, I see one.
On Joy. Sean, do you want to unmute?
Yeah, can you all hear me?
Yes.
Yes, okay. So in the past, I've worked with FIO in some of the Pure Side program, where we were bringing students offshore and looking at some potential offshore springs. And, as we kind of developed the idea for this cruise, it became, really evident that not only do, fisheries or, FWC's reef replenishment program are interested in some of these features, but archaeologists are interested, hydrogeologists are interested. It kind of goes down the gambit of folks that are really kind of interested in these, landscape markers offshore. So I think, partnering up with something, a program like Peerside and taking, folks from all different disciplines and collaborating together to gather as much, scientific data on these landscapes before they become publicly accessible, to kind of get a baseline of what fisheries look like, what's the impact of a spring or a karst feature that has never been fished before, and then it becomes public, and now it's a super hot spot for fisheries. So yeah, that's kind of my idea of collaboration.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Thank you, Sean.
Yeah.
Yeah, I believe you're right. There will be much more interest from different disciplines that might not currently be represented in our community that we really should be ready to bring into the fold. Great. Anything else online? I mean, that's it. Another line. Mark, go ahead.
Hey, thanks. Hopefully you can hear me. Sorry I can't join you in person. It's been a crazy week. Thinking about this discussion, communities of practice, and also what you guys were saying about the kind of shifting to the subsequent interpretation and uses for habitat evaluation made me think of the Restore MDBC groups with mapping and ground truthing group, which I help with. Then they also have the habitat evaluation and assessment team. And they're different teams and different groups with different funding, but their collaboration and their communication is very good. And there's an intent to use all of the mapping data to inform where the habitat evaluation dives and analysis needs to take place. So I was just going to suggest communicating with that group about lessons learned for maximizing the utility of the the bathymetry, the backscatter for the sort of separate user group. It's not a perfect model, but they may have some useful lessons learned. I don't know if anybody in the room or online is part of those groups, but I can give some names if it's helpful.
Great, thank you, Mark. Yeah, and those are parallel, but similar communities that I think you're right, we could borrow our ideas. And that was a really nice segue into lessons learned, unless anybody else wants to point out anything on collaboration. Great. So yeah, let's begin a little on lessons learned. I think that's an obviously something. Don't reinvent the wheel. Learn from others' mistakes. Is there anything specific that we might not already have, or that could be focused on as far as lessons learned?
Who put that?
Yeah, I'm wondering if anybody dare to raise their hands, dig in on this one? As Cheryl asked, who wrote it in? Raise your hand.
No, I told them. Who put that? Raise your hand.
It could be positive or it could be negative. So which way is it? Lessons learned. I mean,
Well, lessons learned are always going to be valuable, right?
right,
Have
regardless.
value, regardless of whether they're negative or positive.
Learn from people's mistakes as well.
Yeah.
Don't do this. Don't do that.
I mean, I didn't write it, but I was just thinking, it could go either way.
Did I see you right here?
Peter Grandma.
Yeah, I can't think of anything specific, but just as people are working with the data or the products, just what worked, what didn't, how long did certain things take? Whatever mistakes people make or whatever goes well.
Sure.
There's just a lot of information that could be out there and save people time.
I think lessons learned could be an aspect of lessons learned that's also in collaboration. I'm thinking as I'm talking as usual. But in other words, what if somebody painstakingly developed a machine learning method to do something that's really makes something efficient, some component of using the data or whatever.
And having that, like, learning that A, they're doing it, that's collaboration, but B, some of the lessons learned in constructing that. Because I think we're gonna see it, the evolution and explosion of AI-based applications, tools, technologies is upon us. And it's gonna be great to track those. So I think that can be part of lessons learned.
Going down the AI pipeline path, there will be a lot of lessons learned. Right, something else on that. I think we have a minute. We go till 10 past.
Yeah,
Dig in on another word. Let's dig in on another word.
Don't you have another question?
I do. We could jump to the next question. Anything? Let me open it up.
Yeah, 20 minutes?
Well, yeah.
Yeah, you can do
Let's do another word.
Yeah.
What's bigger here, usage or data processing methods, or maybe
Usage looks bigger to me, but that could be.
that one's so broad. I really am curious where that will go with the community of practice, or how a COP could support that. As Cheryl said, raise your hands if you wrote that in. We have some online. Thanks, Nick. Divert.
Jeff Danielson.
It's not shy.
Yeah, this is Jeff Danielson from USGS. I did put stakeholder usage, especially in this current, I'm not gonna use the word climate, but the current way we're in now, we have to show relevance and justify how our products are being used, and getting input on how they're being used is really important to justify, where things are. And so getting that feedback loop from the community is really important to myself, for example, but I know other folks are probably in the same boat. Just knowing, how are those products being used to solve real world problems? Supporting, all the new priorities given by the current state of affairs and so forth. So it's good to, at least that's kind of input that I like hearing, and I'm open to conversation on that.
And there's also, I didn't notice before, there's stakeholder insights. So I would, if like stakeholder usage and stakeholder insights are kind of, together.
Yeah, thank you, Jeff. That definitely helped me understand that's perspective. Yeah. That's a great example.
And I also have, I guess when it comes to, I'll just talk one more time, Cheryl, just to help you out.
Thanks, Jeff.
Yeah, I like the idea of, in terms of, processing, gaining efficiencies, I think is always important. Through a project like this where you have all these different data methods and yeah, obviously we're involved with integration, but as technology evolves, you can always become more efficient, and as you learn lessons, it helps to make things faster, or better. So it's, and I think, as we bring in different types of data into the future, that can also be overall good for the overall area.
Definitely. Thank you.
Did anyone in the room put usage or stakeholder usage? Oh, good.
I can ping off of that. And so at the Flood Hub, we're pretty early on in our stakeholder engagement and also products. But understanding how stakeholders use flood data is definitely something that we're looking toward. I see a big collaboration opportunity in like tapping into your networks with local governments and different stakeholders as you have conversations about the data, and us being able to make those connections as well.
Okay, unless there's anything else with the next cloud, we good? Great. Second question, second and final. What elements of the community of practice would be helpful to you for you to share and learn? And elements here we're thinking, I had that list. It's a user form, a data portal,
Oh, gotcha. Okay.
yeah, an element, that we can implement. There's others. storing that. Webinars, shops,
Oh, community.
informal meetings, a list of, you know, your network contacts and their expertise, those kinds of things. A webinar, 6 months.
We didn't do it. You know,
Thank you.
this is making me think that maybe if, I don't know if it would be too much work, it really shouldn't be. Maybe we like do like a quarterly, have someone from the community of practice give a webinar about something that they're doing with the, with the FSMI data. I mean, this is obviously after. Once I have it. Once a quarter wouldn't be too much of a lift. Seems to me, since if webinars are coming out that big.
What counterparts are doing.
Yeah, tell us a story about how you're using the data and what you're doing. That definitely would spark collaboration. That's a potential.
Give just another few moments to that final, you get 2.
I think I put it unlimited.
Oh, you can keep going.
I didn't think somebody was, I mean, other than Anna.
The data.
I didn't think anybody else.
I guess you can enter the same word multiple times.
I was thinking about putting in this one too.
Okay, yeah, so webinar seems to really be standing out here. And I think those are very clear, useful tools that come out of community practice. They are informal ways of sharing now with the virtual world and virtual meetings getting so effective. And post-COVID, those have become even more valuable, I think, to community practice. Who put in webinars?
People. I did. Thank you.
Anything specific you think would be a platform or format that you?
I think just understanding, just having more informal connection opportunities with people, understanding how they're operating this space and like how we might be able to collaborate, just kind of another touch point, contact with people.
There was a suggestion here in the corner, loud whisperers about doing something like a quarterly, maybe at a quarterly basis. You have to think about what content would be most valuable. The idea of what are you doing with the data, like what projects are spinning off from having this data available, although that's a little bit down the line.
So I'll give an example. So for some people know this, but the Resilient Florida program, which provides money to do vulnerability assessments and even, nature-based, projects and stuff like that for coastal protection, they have a quarterly webinar. And basically it's pretty much anyone who's received funding from, FDEP's program, Resilient Florida program, which is municipalities and hence their consultants can, just put in an abstract. And so there can be, a call for abstracts and, usually not that many people submit that I know of. So they have a quarterly, what is, somebody doing about coastal resilience in their community sort of thing. It would be, and that's what sparked my brain when I saw that.
And I know there are other communities of practice that have webinars that would probably be very relevant to us as a community, to FCMaP. So there's, we could probably, and they're usually public or open enough that we can at least try to harvest some of those opportunities, put them back out to our community.
Maybe if there's, we can somehow track webinars being put on by other groups, right. But is that what you were saying? Yeah, okay, I'm sorry.
Exactly. Thank you for reiterating.
Anytime.
Anybody else put webinars in online? Your ideas? or elaboration on that?
Feel free to unmute too.
Yeah, jump right in. The virtual is perfect. You hear you better than people across the room.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is Jeff again. I think it'd be cool to maybe do some story maps too that could tell stories on how the data is being used and applications. That always drives user engagement, user use, and showcases the value. But that's just a thought for me, I guess.
Yes, our FCMaP coordinator happens to be an expert with story maps and has developed some really nice ones.
So that would require the community of practice to provide content. Because correct me if I'm wrong, story maps themselves are hard to build if you have content.
Right.
Yeah. So, that's an idea too. Yeah. And they're nice. They're visually compelling.
Yeah, very
It's
effective.
a good way to communicate externally. Yeah.
Communication was, it was on the last. Yeah, communication and ways to communicate clearly. All right, what else? Yeah, story maps is big. Does anybody else have content ideas or how story maps could be helpful? Elaborate on any of those? Anyone knows what a story map is, right? Amber?
When Nick was showing his presentation, very map too.
Yep.
I like that, the globe format, you can zoom in on whatever I actually shared it with someone while we were working. Good format.
And if all of you, because I'm sure you are all on the FCMaP newsletter, but our newsletter now is in story map format.
So we're already doing it.
Yeah. We can
No
certainly.
more on my list.
It's just a great communication tool. Comes out of the GIS world, but it doesn't need to be. It's great that maps are easily integrated, but it doesn't need to be map specific by any means. Cool, okay. What kind of, we have, the listserv, that's bold here. And we do have our larger listserv and you get communications from us. Obviously it's valuable, got us all here in the room together and online. Who's thinking listservs would be useful to them and can you elaborate? An email listserv, right?
Oh, okay.
I'm assuming.
Yeah.
So again, it's a communication tool way, and a listserv is typically the Coral Group, I think, is probably the best one that I've been on for a long time. You write it's moderated, so your email doesn't directly go to the whole group, but there's hundreds of people on this listserv all over the world, international. Something relevant, important comes up, and it's this really nice way to have communication back. Moderators usually pretty good about the emails out, but you do want to read it, make sure it's appropriate before you send it out to the entire listserv. So yeah, it's an easy way for you just simply to reply to a message and everyone sees it. It's moderated.
What about an FCMaP Facebook? You could almost make that like a listserv with. It has to be moderated.
Mhm.
I know we talked about it before, but because it was under FIO and FIO already has their Facebook page, I thought that was why that was kind of not an option, but I'm not that it can't be revisited.
I put informal question and answer situation. It sounds like the listserv serves that purpose.
And I put interactive online collaboration and that would be served with a listserv. Right.
Yeah. Now I think
What kind of the discussion too? Sorry, Renee.
Yeah,
Was
so I was
it
gonna
be-
say.
Okay.
The only issue with the listserv is maybe there is ways to archive it, but it's not always
Guest.
Whereas a discussion forum, which can or cannot be moderated, that's all together, and then it can be
Guest.
topics going on.
And I will only get myself in trouble by saying this, but so the point of having a hub, so the FCMaP hub is really, like Renee said, it's one way right now, and we have not really utilized the whole point of the hub, which is really to have a community. We have that option, we just have not been engaged with the with everybody and had the discussion kind of forums and topics and whatnot, but that can be done. There'll be a little of a learning curve. Back to 5 minutes doing it, but but it's there and it's possible. So if that kind of ties all of those together, that's definitely use.
So the foundational components are there. We would just have to build them out for things like listserv, a discussion. I think we probably want to.
We could list the webinars on there as well, the different webinars that we could, under that as well. It would be easier to get out there for everyone.
Like the community, you all might hear something that we don't know. That would be a great way to communicate that to everyone.
And that answers, that responds to a lot of the work there.
It does. Can I ask if there be any specific topics that people would feel discussion forum would be good and helpful for? The general data synthesis specific to habitat mapping.
My brain goes right to datums and so many. Datum's a huge one out there. You have all these data sets, but is it in a is it in just 84? What realization? Blah 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 blah. And you don't have those lined up. Right off the top, you're starting off with 2 different data sets, and that's just a simple question to somebody.
Yeah, datums. Sometimes datum conversion tools.
Yeah.
Anything else on listservs or discussion forums? The communication device or elements? Has anyone used Discourse as a tool, a platform for communication? I think it's licensed, but maybe something, unless we can do it all with Answer.
I've never used the discourse, so I'm not sure. But we could look into it and I could figure out whether we already have what we need or we need.
No, if you don't mind me asking, what is your community of practice? You said you contribute to, what platform are you all using? There. Yeah, well, yeah, I think there's a lot of different options to consider, but some of them definitely stand out because they're used by these types of communities.
So can I have people to raise their hands one more time? Was this discussion session valuable to you? Did you find it useful? Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Online? Was this useful? Should we do something like this next year?
Yes.
Yes.
Invited back online.
Because we're always looking for things to, get some interaction and gather information that can be useful to the most people. So this is why we came up with this approach. Didn't get as much active participation as it would like to have seen, but I complain a lot. So Jennifer has something to say? Go for it. Jennifer?
Hey, I had my hand up too long, sorry. I was just saying it's useful to have these kinds of discussions, yes.
Oh, thank you. Okay, good.
Excellent, yeah. I would take not a whole lot of input, as we're doing pretty well as a community of practice. But I think there's certainly more opportunities for us to build out, especially now as we go into the next phases.
Yeah.
Okay, so unless there's anything else we want to talk about, I think, we're actually right around on time. So.
Yeah.
All right, thanks, y'all.
Hey, we will be on break until 2:25.
That worked out. I could end it sooner.
And I'm full.
So much. Should
And ask her on
I'll be gone that week also.
the right now.
We're being muted as the room.
Oh, my room.
Katrina, are you there?
Did you say Katrina?
No, I was gonna try to do this on the side, not in front of everybody and put you on the spot, but our first speaker is Stephen White, and he's not here with us right now for some reason. So you are the.
Can you hear me?
Oh, you're there?
Yes, this is Stephen.
Oh, Amber didn't, she thought you weren't there, so.
Listed in here at all.
Well, regardless.
Okay.
He's the one that was putting words in.
So I apologize, Stephen, that's great. We thought you were MIA. So if you are ready to unmute, share your, use your camera if you want, and share your screen, that would be great.
Yeah, I think if you can just make me a presenter, I can do that.
He's not showing up in the system.
I see, he's right in the middle. He's right. Here.
Even with a
Must be,
T.
because hang on, let me see.
Trips.
You leaving, Jordan Wayne?
Apparently Al Carl.
It's like.
Oh,
Yeah, it's true. The list of participants where I can.
You can see.
If you see that, where is this?
Yeah.
Yeah. Stephen, do you have,
The mermaids, right?
can you link your slides to me? I can share them from here if that's possible.
Yeah, I think I had provided them to you previously. I believe.
Oh,
Okay.
Kristen.
Well, that's good. Maybe, Stephen, can you also just pop out and pop right back in? See if that fixes it. I apologize.
Yep, I can do that.
Something difficult.
It's not just, but I would. Sorry, everybody.
So.
One
In letter
thing.
4.
That's a fish joke.
Go for it.
Hearing.
What does the fish say when he swam into the wall?
Yeah.
Damn.
Yeah, I'm back in.
My time.
All right, can you back in?
Again, by the time I get.
Yes.
Great timing to come back in. I'm still not getting him. It's such. All right, we're adding you to our system on our end to see if that can do it. I apologize.
Stephen, what is your, on Teams, there's an SA White, a Stephen White 1, S White 100.
It should be a Stephen W. dot and then in parentheses Noah.
Okay, we might have to just share your slide. for you. Sorry, everybody.
I hope you said thank you.
Stephen, I apologize. It does not like you for some reason. We'll do, but share your screen for you. That's okay.
Yeah, if you can share, I mean, if you have my slides and you want to place those up, that's fine.
See, this is why, thank you for giving them to me, because this is exactly. Can everybody see them?
Yes, we can see them off and then.
Okay. Steven, go, hurry. Before they disappear on me.
Okay. Yeah. So,
Start the slideshow.
yeah, good afternoon. Yeah, I'm Stephen White. I'm staff cartographer with NOAA's National Geodetic Survey's Remote Sensing Division. So yeah, we can just jump into this. We can go to the second slide, please. So kind of gonna let you know where we generally fall within NOAA. We are, again, NGS, Remote Sensing Division, has three.
Steven, are you there? See, it's all on him. His side of me.
That is so strange, but you're right, he's usually used to you back in the meetings.
Mute the.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
You're back?
Can you hear me?
Now we can.
Okay. So yeah, sorry. Next slide, please. So the Coastal Mapping Program, we have the congressional mandate to conduct remote sensing surveys for demarcating the nation's legal coastline, with goals to provide up-to-date national shoreline, also acquiring nearshore elevation data, and we've used several sources in the past. So next slide, please. And yeah, and we'll go one more slide as well. Yeah, now we're caught up. Okay, and so one of the big things, we've been trying to do as of late is really support hydrographic surveys. So RSD will kind of come in beforehand, collect topography, and we'll provide that to OCS so they can plan operations, use it for situational awareness, and hopefully in the end, it increases efficiency and ship operations. So next slide, please. So this just gives you a general overview of where we've been collecting topobathy. We'll kind of key in on Florida here in a minute, but you can see we've been doing a lot of work, especially on the Gulf Coast and East Coast, Caribbean. We've actually even gone into some of these riverine environments, supporting the National Water Model. And then you can also see some of the areas that we've been doing out in the Pacific and as well as Alaska. And a lot of those Pacific islands, those were directly supporting NOAA ship operations. So next slide, please. So now we're getting into Florida. Well, you guys have been doing tons of mapping there yourselves here lately. This is, what NOAA NGS has acquired over the last few years. Kind of pointing out a few of the ones that should be coming out here pretty soon. So the Hurricane Ian supplemental, we're starting to see that data filter in as we speak. We did go and collect Banana River. There were some access issues there, so we were able to bring the government plane in and get some okay data for that. And actually that data should be going out here probably in the next month or so. Florida 2308 and 2401, those are two projects that actually should be out as well by the end of the year. So next slide, please. Just a few areas we just wanted to highlight. So that area around Big Bend that was made available in Digital Coast last year. Next slide. We also have been working on the pre-Ian data, and actually that data should be out probably here in the next month or so on Digital Coast. So next slide, please. And then another thing we've been doing, we've kind of been assessing, what data we've gotten in the past. And, like I think we were seeing yesterday, environmental conditions can definitely dampen some results at times. So we've kind of been looking and kind of focusing on areas saying, hey, can we use newer technologies and, really try to key in on, more favorable environmental conditions, really try to clean up some of these areas. So we were doing that last year before we headed down to Puerto Rico and the Virgin Islands. So next slide. And I just wanted to highlight, I know these aren't in Florida, but these are some really cool data sets. Again, supporting ship operations. This was made available on Digital Coast, the American Samoa area. A really good data set, not only supporting, NOAA emissions, but Scripps Institute, they were using it for some wave modeling over the reef crest. The one in the bottom left, the lagoon, that data was actually used for a living shoreline project. NCOS was actually taking the data and saying, okay, where do we have gaps in our benthic habitat maps, and how can we use this to improve those? And then USGS is looking to integrate that into their 3DEP, and also FEMA is using the data for flood modeling. So just a lot of good applications from a data set. And then next slide, one other data set I just wanted to highlight. We have been collecting out in the Northwest Hawaiian Islands, mostly the eastern side, where we can get our aircraft out safely. So we were able to pick up Niihau, Nahoa, Necker, and French frigate. And these they should be available currently on Digital Coast. So those just pretty cool data sets. Next slide, please. And I'll just start trying to jump through these pretty quickly. So just giving some stats of, what we did last year in FY24, the amount of shorelines, the amount of ports analyzed, the actually new shoreline for ports, the amount of square mileage for topobathy LiDAR. And then all of this went to support the update of about 300 electronic navigation charts. So thank you. So next slide. So we'll move kind of into emergency response. Some of the things we have done there. And I think you can definitely see Helene was a major response for us. So, kind of blows out the other response efforts. And I'll go to the next slide. It just shows you really the amount of flying we were doing, and quite a bit of flying in Florida, especially on the Gulf Coast during both Helene and Milton, then jumping over a little bit more towards, I guess, the Northeast coast. And then you can also see we were up in the kind of North Carolina, Tennessee area where the floods were really bad. So next slide. Another emergency response effort I just kind of wanted to point out was the Francis Scott Key Bridge. We were down in St. Croix with the King Air. And once this happened, within 2 days, we were up in the Baltimore area. We collected 2 flights for this, and we were producing 5-centimeter orthos from that. And that was, generally used as kind of the base map net for a lot of the response efforts. And we also collected it in a manner so that you could do SFM from the data as well. So next slide. And the next slide just shows some of the imagery of the wreckage there. So, and I'll go into, and I know Katrina's up after this, so hopefully, and I just wanted to highlight some NOAA things. So next slide, the NRTs, they came in, and one of the things is, the channel is very well surveyed, but it's outside the channels. I think they said hadn't been surveyed since, I want to say, the 70s or 80s. So, they focused on getting, the shallow draft channel surveyed, and then also surveying as the wreckage was being taken out of the water. And they also actually had a laser scanner on the launch, so they were able to scan the bridge there too with LiDAR. And then again, I know Katrina, next slide. So there wasn't a national bathymetric source that had been created. So they stood this up really quickly. And as data came in, they were able to, add it in and modify things. And that next slide led to the rapid nautical chart updates. And you'll see from March 29th to April 24th, they were doing a lot of updates to, support these recovery efforts. So next slide, please. Now we'll kind of just go into some quick research. So we've been developing the SAT-Bathy tool. It's at version 2.1.10 at the moment. And the next slide just shows some general areas of where we've been running that, especially in the North Carolina areas, some areas in Alaska, as well as Yemen. So next slide. Another effort we've been working with Oregon State and the University of New Hampshire is a TPU product for topobathy data. And on the right side is what we're developing internally that we actually push to the National Bathymetric Source, or NBS. So again, band 1 is, our ellipsoidal heights right now in NAT 83 2011, in the future of NatRef, MatRef, CatRef, et cetera. And then the bands 2 and bands 3. So we have the THU and the TVU, which are, the TPU pieces of the puzzle. So next slide. And just showing some of the updates for Sea Blue, some of the added sensors on the left there, the pills, the RAMs, some of the Seas Mills, and then you actually also see some of the future releases, whether it's the Chiroptera 5, some of the ISAT-2 modeling, and some LAS and classification options that will be available. So next slide. So kind of going TPU a little bit further, we were doing on the topobathy side, but we're also, we do a lot of tide coordinated stereo photogrammetry. So creating a TPU product for that is underway too. And we're also working with Oregon State to develop that. So next slide. And then kind of to wrap up some of at least the research kind of stuff we're doing. Also looking at relative reflectance mapping or normalized intensity. And you can see what was collected at Neathart's Bay on the left side. And then as you run it through the process, you get it's, it can be used to assist with benthic habitat mapping, et cetera, probably a little more robustly. And then the next slide, I just wanted to end on, so just let everybody know, and I think there's a lot of people that know about it, but we are modernizing the NSRS, or the National Spatial Reference System. We'll see that it should be rolled out here in the next year or two. But again, we are going away from NAT 83 and NAVD 88, and we'll be going to like NatRef and NatP GD 2022, et cetera. So just be aware of that. And yeah, some of the things that, the modernization will help out with improving accuracy, access, alignment, and just being a much more consistent datum across about a quarter of the globe. So I think that was my last, or one more slide just to tell you all of our data is publicly distributed. So either it's the shoreline through the Shoreline Data Explorer, or the LiDAR and the imagery through Digital Coast. And I think that wraps up the presentation. So thank you.
And I apologize for the issues, but thank you for getting me your slides so we could do this. Anybody have any questions? Oh, we're doing lightning talk. We're doing a discussion at the end. I'm sorry. No questions allowed. Wait till the end. Thank you, Steve.
Thank you.
I will try to get Katrina up here now.
And we'll have a time for discussion at the end.
Yep.
So stay on if you can.
Okay, Katrina.
Yeah, would you like me to share my screen? Is that easier?
Would be great. And if you want
Okay.
to, you can as well, but you don't have to. Oh, yep, Stephen needs to be muted. Thank you.
Can you see my screen okay?
Great.
Yeah, good. All right, so my camera won't let me turn it on. I apologize, but hello everybody. I'm Katrina Wiley. I'm with NOAA's Office of Coast Survey. I'm really excited to talk about some updates that we've had in one of our product pipelines called Blue Topo. So there's a little QR code if you want to learn more about Coast Survey and Blue Topo. You can feel free to scan that an hour later or never. But Coast Survey is mandated to survey the coast. We've been doing it for a very long time. And our main mission is navigation. And so navigation products and services. There we go. So we focus, of course, on making sure that our stakeholders in the navigation realm are supported through updates to the electronic navigational charts, but also to the new modern format in the S100 world, which is S102 is the high resolution bathymetry. So then this is providing the bathymetry directly to the mariners so they can navigate off of that. So they can set their contour to whatever is appropriate for them and really have a more data-driven navigation product. The bathymetry that we're creating is also, helps us for internal planning. So we know where to send assets to go survey or where to be aware of things like the Florida Coastal Mapping Program, where a lot of new data is being collected so that we can make sure that we grab it and pull it in and not resurvey over the same area. And then also the public. So We also have modelers in our office, Office Coast Survey, who use this bathymetry to support modeling for various reasons. Datums I heard earlier is really important, and you need the bathymetry for that. And there's also other reasons to have bathymetry for models. So we have a Blue Topo product, which is public as well as modeling. The only difference between those two is the vertical datum that we serve it on. Modeling is on the chart datum, so that's more of a tidal datum, like mean low water, whereas Blue Topo is on NAVD 88. So I think last year when I presented, we did not have the Mid-Atlantic finished. We do now. So we've been working over in Alaska, Great Lakes, and the West Coast now, but we've got good coverage of Florida. Now Coast is our, it's also a Coast Survey site that you can go on, nowcoast.noaa.gov. You can interact with Blue Topo. What we've been really working on is to try to make this as accessible and transparent and using the FAIR standard data practices, allowing people who might not know what an S102 file is or not want to go and pull in a whole bunch of geotiffs, the ability to just go to a viewer and interact and zoom around with the data. So Blue Topo's here. You can look at the elevation layer, and I'll show a couple other layers as well. And it also has a link to a WMTS, a web map tile service. So if you want to go interact with your own GIS, you can go into Esri or QGIS and do that as well. Zooming into Tampa, if this looks familiar to you, this is Tampa. You can look at elevation. That's what a lot of people are interested in. So you can, of course, start there, and then there's a drop down where that red box is. One of the other things that's very interesting is to know, like, what are the contributing sources? What sources contributed to the best available bathymetry? We are very interested in metadata. So when we do our super session, things like quality of the bathymetry really matter. What's the uncertainty? Is it just feature detection or not, right? Our mariners need to know if they're going to hit a rock or not. Like, is the bathymetry there capable of finding a rock? So we use all that quality metadata on every survey. Then we combine it, we amalgamate it, using also a sense of decay in time and space. We're still working on that to improve it. But all those individual sources that contribute end up being the best available for that location. So there's one answer per pixel here, and you can go and click on every pixel and it'll tell you exactly who collected it, what the data license is, the start and end date, all of those quality metrics. Was it feature detection capable? Like, was it measured bathymetry or was it an interpolation? We do a lot of interpolation within surveys and then across surveys to show the whole, a complete coverage image, because again, for navigation that matters to make contours and depth areas to show continuous coverage, but also for modelers, they want to see a full surface. So one of the other layers you can look at is bathy coverage. So in this case, blue is where there's actually a measured depth versus red is where something that we have interpolated across to show coverage either within or between surveys. And there's a couple other drop downs there related to the features and uncertainty. You can look at, you can investigate these. These layers are also part of the web map tile service. So you can investigate them in GIS as well. Okay, so where's our data? If you were to, oh, sorry, one more. So on Now Coast, there's also this Blue Topo tile scheme. If you click that on, you get our tile scheme. This is the different resolutions that we are creating right now, 4 meters, 8 meters, 16 meters, on the different various boxes that you see there. I have clicked in that box off Tampa. You can kind of see some of that information, that this was a H13173 multi-beam survey. The elevation there is 15 meters with 33 meters uncertainty, collected in 2018 to 2019. So it's collected by the Office of Coast Survey. And then if you kept scrolling down, it would tell you more information. But this identify, click here, will tell you which tile that falls in. And that has a link to the geotiff and the raster attribute table that you can then download from our AWS bucket. Our elevation and uncertainty are the first 2 layers in every geotiff. The third layer is contributor, and that's all that contributing information for all the sources that are contributing. So that tile scheme you can kind of use as a onesie twosie and go click and it'll bring you right to the geotiff. Or If you want to interact more with the bucket itself, this is the AWS bucket that we have. You can see Blue Topo there. You can see modeling. There's also navigation data. Again, Blue Topo is on NAVD88, modeling's on chart datum. And if you want to interact in that bucket, you can go in there. There's some code that we have up on Git to help make that easier if you are into, running code. But we also just did post a executable that makes it hopefully even easier for people to access this data. You just can put whatever polygon that you want, that you're interested in, either a shapefile, a geopackage, whatever, some kind of geometry. Pick what data you want. So if you want Blue Topo, do you want modeling, do you want navigation, and pick an output directory. And then if you want to make a VRT, that's a virtual tile. So basically, if you're familiar with Esri, that's like a, what do they call it? Model. I forget what they call it in Esri, but it puts all the tiles and puts them together. So it's a continuous surface of all the individual tiles. And then this gives you an output location that has all the data for your area of interest. It creates the VRTs. It also has a database. We update this data weekly for Florida, and for the Northeast, we're working on updating the Mid-Atlantic and Gulf to also be weekly, again, to support navigation. So if you're going to run this script again, it will go and check against your local folders. If there's anything that's been updated, go grab the updated tiles and then remake that GMRT or make that VRT so that you have the latest. And so that's one way that people can, not have to click one tile at a time. You can just get your whole area and keep it managed and updated. And I think that's all I have, but we're really excited to start getting all this data integrated and added to our compilation. We're pretty psyched to have the East Coast and Gulf and Caribbean done. And of course, Florida is a big part of that. So any questions that you guys have for me, we can always be reached at ocs.nbs@noaa.gov. And that's all I got. Thank you so much.
Great. Thank you, Katrina. Next, we'll hear from Jeff. Jeff, there you go. At least we know you can unmute and talk.
Can you grant me control to share my screen?
Amber's doing that right now.
Coming.
Thank you, Amber.
Yeah.
Let's do that. Let's do this. Okay. All right. Can you see my screen? Can you see my slides?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. So thank you very much. Sorry not to be there in person. So this has been a great meeting. Jeff Danielson with U.S. Geological Survey, going to talk about the Coastal National Elevation Database work in statewide Florida. Just a background on CONED again. CONED is a project within the USGS Coastal Marine Hazards and Resources Program to support coastal marine spatial planning by constructing these regional high-resolution topobathymetric digital elevation models to support, fundamental science modeling, hazard applications, and also infrastructure, of course. With CONED, the data comes from, federal partners, state partners. We sort of use data as much of it as it's available. Obviously, through IWG OCM, all the partners, map once used many times, so we're using it many times. CONED really is a collection of the best available topography bathymetry used in these integrated surfaces. Everything is transformed and aligned both horizontally and vertically into the same reference system. From a stakeholder point of view, who uses this type of data, these logos on the bottom sort of summarize sort of the stakeholder users, where we have, flood inundation modeling, the storm surge, to sediment transport, to hydrodynamics. It's a broad range of usages of what people need in terms of integrated data. In terms of methods, CONED's well established in terms of methodologies for doing large regional scale base integration, and a lot of it's based on papers that are in these QR codes. And one very recently in 2024, where we included steps to improve blending between moderate high resolution, as well as removing the effects of sort of what we call ghost shorelines and other features in a more automated way, by using a sort of a binary stacking approach, and then being able to sort that binary stacking based on prioritization. And then those two layers become layers that get fed into the overall blending approach for these regional modeling. For statewide Florida, this project is in collaboration with Florida DEP. So Joshua mentioned a few things about CONED in his talk, and so we are sort of the integration arm of this project, taking all this disparate data and putting it together into these regional models, being cast into both UTM zone 16, 17. So 16 is the Panhandle, 17 is Peninsula Florida. Yeah, I mean, you're seeing some of the specifications of what is being built to on the left. I won't read that in detail, but to date we've actually pre-processed for this version 1 surface 109 geospatial data sets across the statewide Florida area. That basically totals 190,000 square kilometers of topographic LiDAR, topobathymetry LiDAR, and bathymetry, with a temporal date range of 2024 through 2004. So it's a large amount of data already for this version 1 surface, which covers everything in sort of the yellow polygon, basically. And obviously we'll talk about what's coming in. All the data coming in from Florida SQL mapping would be part of what we call version 2. Just some highlights and examples of kind of how version 1 looks. And there's been a lot of great data collected for Florida from Army Corps, NOAA, NGS, USGS, all kinds of partners, from all these post-hurricanes of Matthew, Irma, Marie, Nicole, Debbie, Ian, Helene, Milton. There's a lot of hurricanes, and they've all had pre and post surveys. And so as part of our stacking, we're prioritizing these data sets based on the hurricanes to minimize as much temporal changes as possible. But obviously, after every storm, you have change. But as we prioritize and stack this data, we're trying to minimize as much based on the sort of the age and date of the hurricane. We also have some cool water body data from Lake Okeechobee from Army Corps. Timeline for this version 1 is basically March 31st. We'll have a version of Panhandle, which I'll show in a second. But by the end of June, we'll have basically a version 1 integration done for all of Florida. That's our goal for both UTM zone 16, 17. We've also had lots of new data coming in the door for this project, still rolling in, people wanting to contribute. One, thanks to Florida DOT, where they've collected topographic LiDAR for a good chunk of the eastern coast of Florida going down to the Keys. Very dense LiDAR. I mean, it's QL0 basically in terms of quality. We also got some really nice bathy data from the Southwest Florida Water Management District. So thanks to Nicole for sharing that. It's topographic LiDAR with also integrated surfaces for the reservoirs as well. So really nice inland topobathy and reservoir data all combined together. And I think a lot of the work was done by Dewberry, but it was really, really good, nice data. It's what we need for inland water bodies, inland areas, rivers especially. So, versus having just hydroflattened data across these rivers, we're going to have real bathymetry in some of those rivers, like the Rainbow River, for example, and also the With Lakuchi. This shows a cool example of the Everglades. Everglades is going to be a huge data set for science applications, across the USGS especially. It's been, this is probably the most comprehensive updated model for the Everglades, and you're seeing just, just the detail of these profiles coming out of this type of integrated surface. And obviously this gets improved as we have more data coming into the stack of data. This is the Panhandle as it currently stands. We're processing in 10 by 10 kilometer tiles. So you see all those white tiles. That's a 10 by 10 kilometer tile index that gets across the entire, UTM zone 16. And we also have the same tile index for UTM zone 17. So we'll be integrating in those 10 by 10 kilometer tiles. And will be, this product will be distributed though, not in those tiles exactly, but we're having discussions with Kim Jackson and Florida DEP about, how this product will be distributed. Our guess, it'll be cut some large chunks going from north to south, across, and maybe the panhandle, and the panhandle could be one chunk by itself. If we move to like Tampa Bay, this shows a cool kind of blended example where, it's close to your meeting place, which is cool, but you're seeing a profile coming out of the data, which is what people want to see, and the shipping channel is pretty obvious of where that's at. But this example here would have lots of data coming in from various ages, and from sonar to LiDAR, from like seismal to some RAMS data sets, for example. If we move on to sort of the plan for the future for this project, this is a multi-year effort collaboration between USGS and Florida DEP, where we're obviously going to bring in all the version 2 Florida Seafront Mapping Initiative data. We'll be working pretty much with the rasters though, so we're not really going to be working a lot with the point clouds unless we have issues, but hopefully working a lot with the raster-based data and metadata. And then we'll be using our techniques and approaches to blending those raster data sets. As you might expect, there could be differences between overlapping zones. That's not the role of this project, is to correct for those offsets. We'll be trying to blend as much as we can to minimize the transition between those offsets. But but this project is not in the business of correcting the offsets. But hopefully there's not a lot of really nasty offsets. There's a lot of good data being acquired, and we expect it to be fairly consistent, hopefully. Moving on to some research methods that we're doing within USGS. We heard Paul Turner talk about the SOMP and satellite-derived bathymetry is being added to Chapter 2 of the bathymetry. USGS is heavily involved in the development of satellite bathymetry methods, and we published a few papers over the last year and a half. One is using photogrammetric SDB, using like Maxar stereo to derive underwater bathymetry, and that's at basically a 1 meter spacing or a ground surface distance, so really high resolution. Obviously, you have to have clear water for SDB, but the satellite SDB gets you both topo and bathy over bare earth areas, for example, using Maxar data. Min-Soo Kim developed a physics-based approach that uses like Landsat or Sentinel-2 or Maxar, where you basically take the radiance values from the multispectral data and you basically do an atmospheric correction that's improved and enhanced over the water. And then you basically solve for the known optical properties and resolving depth through an optical inversion. And we're currently moving to test that method using Sentinel-2 right now. But I do have one example that's pretty cool. That's over the Florida Keys. So you're seeing sort of the coloring is sort of satellite-derived bathymetry from Maxar Worldview Stereo, which is really, really detailed. And you're seeing obviously the Keys. The red points are ISAT2 transects coming in from ISAT2, which I use as validation in this case. And we also did an alignment too, so we can improve the accuracy of SDB by doing an alignment to known topography, for example, in Monica's method, or even take some data to align in Min-Soo's approach. But both methods are actually physical based, meaning that you don't have to have calibration to get results. But to increase the accuracy of the results, you want to do some type of an alignment if you can, if you have the data. But these approaches were developed for the Office of Naval Research, so they can work in areas where there might not be calibration data. But in this case, in Florida, we did a small alignment, and the data got down to about 57 centimeters, mean square error, from satellite-derived bathymetry. So that's pretty cool. Obviously, it's got to have clear water, but certainly I see SDB as one of the tiers of data that can be used to fill in gaps in the overall coverage of bathymetry. And I believe that's my last slide, so thank you very much.
Thank you, Jeff. So Jennifer, are Are you able to unmute and share your screen?
Start turning the light.
I am unmuted and I will attempt to share my screen. All right. All right, are we good?
Yes, can you hear us?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yeah, you're good. The screen's up.
Okay, great, thanks. Well, I guess I'll start. I'm Jennifer Wozencraft with the Corps of Engineers. I work for the Coastal and Hydraulics Lab of the Engineer Research and Development Center, and my couple of my roles are director of the JOBTEX, Joint Airborne LiDAR Bathymetry Technical Center of Expertise, and the program manager for the Corps of Engineers National Coast. A couple of different topics to cover today. I'll try to go through them a little quickly since I know we're a little behind time-wise. But no promises because I'm usually long-winded, so y'all crack the whip if you need to. The first one is, the first topic I have is our post-Milton LiDAR surveys and volume computations. Let's see if I can advance my slides. But I thought I'd start with a little bit of background in case some of you aren't familiar. So some of you have heard this a lot and you can take a nap for a couple of slides. But the Joint Airborne LiDAR Bathymetry Technical Center of Expertise is a Corps of Engineers technical center of expertise that combines both operational capabilities and R&D capabilities in airborne LiDAR bathymetry. And then it's also an interagency partnership in airborne coastal mapping and charting and airborne LiDAR bathymetry and complementary technologies. So that's the Corps, the Navy, NOAA, and USGS. And we've all been working together a long time. We recently celebrated our 25-year anniversary. These technologies, we collaborate by sharing where we're all going to be surveying to make sure we're not duplicating effort. We look for opportunities to leverage our research and development that we're doing so that we're, making the best use of the taxpayers' funding in all of those areas. And we talked about communities of practice a little bit earlier. I like to think that we've developed quite a robust community of practice over the years, and you can see all of the different government, industry, and academic folks that we've worked with through the years. And one of our primary tools that we use to collaborate is our annual workshop that we have. We missed a couple during COVID, and we're really not sure what's going to happen with that this year, but that face-to-face kind of in-person workshop is our key community of practice collaboration tool that we use. See if I can get my slides to go. The National Coastal Mapping Program was started back in 2004 in the Corps of Engineers, and we use it to collect regional, repetitive, high-resolution data sets around the coast. So we started in the center of the Gulf of America back in 2004 and worked our way counterclockwise around the coast. And we've completed that circuit 4 times. I think we're working on the or 3 times. We're working on the 4th one now. I lose count after all this time. But what we do is we collect airborne LiDAR topography, bathymetry, RGB imagery, and hyperspectral imagery in a 1 mile wide swath around the coast. And I have a nice example that I like to use from the, Tampa area, Anna Maria Key there, that kind of shows that schema that we collect through the years. And I know this is the post-Milton talk, so kind of the connection there is that we use the National Coastal Mapping kind of capabilities and workflows and tools that we've developed through the years for this program in our post-hurricane mapping as well. So that includes our standard product collection. You can see a couple of examples here. These are from St. Pete Beach. So our primary deliverables are 1 meter digital surface models. So that'll have buildings and trees in it. And I just recently learned when we were developing our JOBTEX Bathy LiDAR specification, that's a little bit of a unique product. Most folks deliver or have delivered to them the image you see on the right, which is the bare earth or digital elevation model that's got all those buildings and trees removed. You can see a list of our other standard products that we deliver And then we talked about uses of data and, you know, what would happen if we didn't have it. But I wasn't actually going to cover this, but since we talked about it earlier, these are all the different ways that the Corps uses our National Coastal Mapping Program data, and that we'll also use the FSMI data for is, you know, we're looking at our sediment management, as I mentioned earlier. We look at our coastal structures, our beach projects. We looked at upland dredge placement sites, our navigation channels. You know, these are really data sets or baseline for any operations that we do when we're moving sand around on the beach. And of course, the two that I've got circled there are the emergency response or storm response activities that we have. And of course, habitat mapping is there too. So just lots of different uses for the data that we can add to our list. And then all of the data is available on NOAA's Digital Coast, which you've heard about earlier, as well as the Corps of Engineers grid system too, that's maintained by our Cold Regions Research Lab. So getting into those post-hurricane surveys, we have been surveying after hurricanes in the state of Florida since 2004, that pretty active hurricane season. So this slide in the background image, it just shows how many times we've surveyed different areas on the coast of Florida. So the color of a line is the number of times we've surveyed. And then I also have here why we map after storms, and there's different reasons for that. FEMA is one of our funders a lot of times for these surveys, and they are looking to provide public for measures. So that's one of the reasons that we collect post-storm data. In the Corps, we're looking at our project impacts. We want to quantify regional impacts, calculate those volumes and shoreline changes. You know, when a big storm comes, Congress wants to know what's it going to take to fix these beaches. So we are trying to answer those requests. How much sand have we lost? And we also use the data to prepare for the next storm. And we are validating our predictive capability of our models. Did this shore respond the way we thought it was going to based on our models? Again, establishing that baseline for any recovery kind of activities that we're doing. And it often, unfortunately, provides the next pre-event data set. And you'll see that was certainly the case for our, I guess that was the case for our Ian surveys. I think that's all I wanted to cover on that one. So moving into Milton itself, it made landfall on October 9th. I'm sure you're all well aware of that. And we received our FEMA mission assignment for the post-storm surveys on October 14th. Bathymetry is important in post-storm surveys. A lot of the sediment volume loss does happen in the offshore, and it's sometimes not evident on the beach, depending on the waves and the way the wind was blowing and the water was moving. So it is important to get that. So one of the things we tried to do was kind of optimize when we flew. And some of the tools that we use to do that were Surfline, the webcams, and their wave forecasts. We're looking for low waves. You know, if you can see into the water from the webcams, that's good. We look at the Sentinel-2 imagery from the Copernicus browser just for general water clarity. And one of the things I especially looked at for this one was river outflow forecasts. We knew that Milton was going to drop a lot of water, and FEMA hosts GIS coordination calls, and they always have a weather report at the beginning, and one of the forecasters said these are low, slow, outflowing rivers after the storms, and it would take a while for the rivers to crest and then finally for that to dissipate. So I have some screenshots just from the NESDIS website of KD 490. So you can, first two panels is about when the storm made landfall. But we didn't have really great conditions altogether when we flew. Red is not great for Bathy LiDAR in these graphics. Is there anything? Oh, for all of these post-storm work, we need final data kind of immediately. We've tried to deliver preliminary data in the past, and it has turned out to be not functional for a lot of folks. So that's one of our big aims that we do here. And we've got a whole workflow that we've developed really since after Hurricane Sandy, where we try to get out in the field, start collecting data, move the people into the field with the data, and turn it around in about a 7-day time frame. So again, we had our mission assignment on the 14th. We actually waited a couple of weeks for those rivers to clear out before we started flying. So around the 25th, we were getting ready to fly, and our seasonal system was not working properly. So we Wolpert had a system, a Hawkeye 5 system down in Fort Lauderdale that was being calibrated. So we actually started working on that system on the west. And those flights occurred from the 26th to the 31st. We were able to get the Seas Mill up and going and actually started flying on the East Coast with that system. And we flew those flights from the 30th to the 17th. And I think I'm already running long. But kind of the differences between the two, we weren't expecting bathymetry. You heard from Malcolm yesterday on the East Coast. It's just a difficult area to work in terms of turbidity. So we were looking at flying at low tide. So that kind of slowed down our data collection. As well as we had lots of big waves coming through from storms out in the Atlantic. So we would sit down for some days and, you know, wait for the water to clear out for us. And so the data has all been delivered. The background image there is Digital Coast. So you can go out there and download the data. And then I have, you know, one of our amusing high-tech whiteboard tracking systems that we use when we're out in the field to process these data sets kind of block by block. So that's kind of how we track and make sure everything gets all delivered on time. Moving on to volumes, we have our Java toolbox we've developed through the years. I just wanted to highlight here that we've got the quick response toolbox is the one that we use to compute volumes. We make baselines and transects, compute the elevation, shoreline, and volume change, and then have some standard map products. We have developed I guess, training materials and a user guide for those, and they're available at the website. You kind of see on the bottom left there. And then I think I kind of alluded to it earlier in my comments. We have not yet done volume computations for pre and post Milton, because I think the pre-Milton data sets are the ones that were collected for FSMI. So we'll wait for those to come out before we do any volume computations. But when we get them done, we'll put them on our hub site that you see at the top of the screen here, and we've just got all of our volume computations that we've done through the years stored in this site. So that's just an example there, and I'm going to go really quickly into the next one. So we'll talk about the Coastal Engineering Resilience Index computation and our web map. So the Coastal Engineering Resilience Index is something that was developed, again, kind of in response to Hurricane Sandy. One of the, I guess, district commanders up in the New England area needed essentially a dashboard to look at all of the beaches up there and see what their health was, you know, relative to storms that might impact it. So the Coastal and Hydraulics Lab got to working on what we called then, I guess, the Coastal Resilience Index. We put engineering in there since then to kind of, you know, focus folks' attention on what this index actually is, because there are other resilience indexes out there. But we designed it to quantify the resilience of beaches based on, you know, kind of the standard coastal engineering principles that wide beaches and high dunes absorb storms better and also can recover more quickly from those storms. And then this is what the Engineering Resilience Index looks like. It's not a very, maybe it looks like a scary equation, but it really isn't. But if you look on the left-hand side of the slide, you'll see a kind of a typical beach profile design or an engineered beach profile design. And some of those parameters, we've got a protective width, which goes from the back of the dune to the shoreline. Crest freeboard, which is from the shoreline up to the top of the dune, the protective elevation, which is from the shoreline to the, I guess, average, excuse me, height of the beach or berm and dune, and other parameters. And it was designed to work on beach profiles, but what we're able to do is extract things like the dune height, the beach width, the beach slope, and the shoreline location, and actually compute all of these parameters using information extracted from beach profiles. There's also some water, or I guess wave and water level information in there as well that we are using some national data sets to pull those from. So the way this has been implemented is we were thinking, you know, we have our National Coastal Mapping Program data all around the coast of the United States. We've got wave data from the WIS data portal, that's Wave Information Studies at ERDIC. We've got the NOAA water levels extreme water level data available to us nationwide. So we can put all that together and create a tool that'll help us compute the Coastal Engineering Resilience Index nationwide. So we, again, draw baselines and transects and extract the geomorphic parameters that I mentioned, the dune height, beach slope, beach width, all of those things from our LiDAR data sets. Grab the information about waves and water levels, put it all into those equations, and compute the Coastal Engineering Resilience Index. And that's all implemented in an ArcGIS tool. Again, I guess that's the one that's called the Feature Extraction Toolbox from that previous slide that I mentioned. And we also have some user guides. You can download the codes itself. And then if you contact Scott, he can get you some of our sample data sets because they're a little too big to put online. We are working on pushing that out nationwide, and we started state of Florida. So we have an example here of some of the features that were extracted. And if you want to go in and play with some of the different features and data sets, you can do that at the website that you see on the slide here. So it'll have in there all of the transects, all of the features, the Coastal Engineering Resilience Index that was extracted. But the one thing that I will say is that each section of the coast uses the most recent data, so it's not all from the same year. So that's one thing that we'll need to address in the future, is how we're going to, you know, represent that in our online map service. Let's see. I wanted to show a couple of examples of how this is used other than just kind of in the dashboard scenario for the Mississippi Coastal Improvements Program. We did kind of a decadal analysis of the Coastal Engineering Resilience Index and actually used that in a data-driven approach to beach design. We found which profiles were the most resilient through time and use those to actually design new beaches there. You can do a temporal analysis. This is an example from Panama City Beach. I think I showed this briefly last year, but on our graph there, we've got years on the x-axis. Our bars go on with the y-axis on the right. So that's amount of sand placed on Panama City Beach at these different time periods. And then green actually is the Coastal Engineering Resilience Index through time. So you can actually see that after that original sand placement, you know, that you can see impacts of storms, you can see impacts where we've done some placements, but overall that initial placement of sand has really raised and maintained the resilience of that beach. So it shows to our stakeholders and our project sponsors that this actually did work in this particular case. And then the last one I have is we're developing, I say we, this is the Regional Sediment Management Program, and the Corps of Engineers is developing a building coastal resilience tool where we're combining dredging information with the Coastal Engineering Resilience Index. So when we need to dredge something, can we identify the place on the coast through the index where that is needed, whether it's project to project or within a single project. And so that's another way that the Coastal Engineering Resilience Index is used. And I wanted to present this because I am hoping that the FSMI data will be used to create kind of a coastal engineering resilience map in the state of Florida, and we can help with the tools to do that. So I think that's what I got.
Thank you, Jennifer. Carol, thank you.
Hi, everyone. So I'm Cheryl Gilbert. Today I'll be talking about the Center for Ocean Mapping and Innovative Technologies, or COMET, which is a cooperative agreement between USF and NOAA's Office of Coast Survey. I'm COMET's program manager, and Steve Morawski, the director, is in the corner over there. There are only 2 names on this slide, but if I listed everyone, should be about 45 names, and that includes faculty, research staff, educators, students and interns at the College of Marine Science and Arts and Sciences at USF. So 8 minutes is not a long time, but I'll quickly review the center's research priorities, give an overview of our field and lab-based research. I'll talk about our education programming, and I'll highlight some of our collaborations with our industry partners and kind of talk about what's next on deck for the remaining months of the program. We are in year 5 of the program. So COMET's 3 overarching objectives are to establish and conduct innovative program of research that focuses on mapping coastal realms, more efficiently provide synthesis products to be used by first responders, to develop and deliver education and training programs to prepare the next generation of specialists, and to communicate these products and services to the general public, to expand and augment the capacity of NOAA and its partners to respond to coastal threats, both here locally and also nationally. So based on our objectives, we kind of drill these down into 6 major pillars. They are uncrewed systems. We have the geodesy program, applied hydrography, modeling, coastal development, and community outreach. But because of time constraints, I'm going to focus really on the uncrewed systems and the personal development piece. And through that, touch a little bit on the high resolution model. Okay, so the research in our uncrewed systems portfolio focuses on 4 main topics, which is understanding the limits of how we can do autonomous running in shallow congested areas. If you've been outside, notice there's boats everywhere all the time in this area. To develop and optimize hardware and software systems for shallow water autonomous mapping. The combination and the fusion of the topography and the bathymetry products in shallow regions. And the presentations today have really shown how valuable these data sets are. And the use of AUVs and ASVs in combination with ship-based for kind of force multiplication and complementary sampling. So what can we use doing multiple assets in the water at the same time? So first, I want to talk about our uncrewed system. So we don't have an unending budget or limitless personnel. So we leverage our industry partnerships when we can, and we use our in-house staff for more focused hardware, software, engineering activities. So over the last 4 years, we've worked with C-Track, Chance, Wolpert, and Saildrone on many recent projects. I'll just go into one of them in a minute. In-house, we've developed Trevor, which is our test robotics environment vehicle for ocean research. Our team loves to name things with fun acronyms, so that's Trevor. That Trevor is mostly used for software and hardware testing and used as a training and teaching tool. And I'll talk a little bit about EMET, which is the Enhanced Mobile Map and Emerging Technologies vehicle in a minute. Okay, so first, our backscatter calibration efforts with our industry partners, something I kind of want to highlight here. So we talked about backscatter a lot in the last day and a half. So why are backscatter calibration sites important? Well, so they allow for accurate and reliable measurements of the seafloor, and it allows to kind of use this data for various applications. So you basically get more bang for your buck, and you can get more information out of your data. So we identified 3 sites for the backscatter calibration sites in the lower left. So we initially surveyed these with Chance Maritime with an EM 2040P and a calibrated slip beam. And then we also surveyed them with Wolpert with R2 Sonic, and then soon we'll be surveying that area with a sail drone using the Norbit I-80S. And so the goal here is to really build a comprehensive library of sensors for these relative calibration sites. And then over the next few months, our team will monitor the stability of that site to make sure that it is a good fit for a long-term calibration site. So a bit about our growing assets. I talked about Emmett earlier, so this should arrive too. We hope to put an R2 Sonic on it. We were also gifted a 34-foot Sea Arc Dauntless. Some of you saw that yesterday on the tour. And we hope to, we spent the better part of a year outfitting it for surveys, and it should be operational very soon. And the goal here moving forward is to deploy Emmett from the Tocobaga and do some of that force multiplication activities you were talking about earlier. I want to point out that this acquisition of the Emmett would not be possible without partnership with the Florida Flood Hub for research and innovation here. Okay, so we have a robust glider program also, but I'm not going to really talk about that a lot right here, except to say that we're using glider-derived sound velocity profiling and comparing it with model-generated SVPs to try to aid in guidance on where you should perform sound velocity profiles and where those profiles might be negligible when looking at mapping. This slide highlights another partnership a few years ago we did with C-Track and Fugro. We had our own little FSMI experiment that we did back in 2021, where we did simultaneous surveys with the LiDAR study. And we also had in-water situ characterization looking at turbidity and some visualization or some light attenuation character of water. And then we looked at some sentinel images. So this was back in 2021-22. So is this survey still applicable? And probably not. I think Jennifer really set me up nicely and checked about where the sand goes. So, you know, have we moved, this is an approximate from a news article, 1 million cubic yards of sand. So I'm pretty sure that the coastal bathymetry changed based on this. So we survey this area again. So I'm happy that FSMI is doing that along with other agencies. And so from the sentinel images, you can kind of see areas with change in color. So you know firsthand that sediment has moved. So why do these changes in bathymetry matter? Well, our modeling group has looked at depth average velocities over a month for old bathymetry and new bathymetry. And they found significant changes in the ship channels and the velocities, and also in areas of kind of complex change where the barrier islands are. So bathymetry does matter. And that's why I kind of put this in my Wordle as change analysis, because it really does affect the coastal hydrodynamic modeling efforts. Okay, so our education programs. We currently offer master's and PhD in the college. We currently have 6 graduates, and there are 13 students currently enrolled. We also offer short courses, and we're working with MTS to deliver our micro-credentialing in various sonar and autonomous vessel piloting. We also have a robust internship program that focuses on field experiences, and Christy highlighted that a little bit in her presentation. We could not do that without support from the Florida High Tech. We recognize we have some subject matter gaps in our faculty, and we're augmenting those with a series of kind of smaller week-long training courses. So following COVID, we really increased our capacity to offer these, and over the last year, we provided 4 of them. I highlighted here because these trainings are open up to all of our partners, and so we try to really, if they're going to make the trouble to come here and do a training, we want to get as many people with that training as possible. Okay, so just going down a list of our current projects, we have big summary, shallow water mapping using multiple multiple simultaneous platforms. Our CSB, I didn't mention that at all because Christy did an amazing job at highlighting that. But that is one of our major efforts that we are focusing on for the remainder of the program, looking at our backscatter sites. And we are looking at some auto classification of habitats using that backscatter. And we also looking at that sound velocity. So that's what we're doing currently. And what are we going to do for the next few months? Last round of COMET, we are integrating the otter, the Tokabata, and the multi-beam. We are looking for those FSMI data products, and maybe do some comparison with CSV, and a stellate derived bathymetry. We are looking at calibrating the CSB with the SDB. So the presentations today were pretty awesome. I'm psyched to follow up on a lot of that. And then we are looking at new modeling with the revised bathymetry, which is very. Any questions at the end? If you want to sign up for a newsletter, you can check out our QR code there. Thank you. And Al.
Last but not least.
Absolutely.
After this, everybody goes home, right?
After we have a long, drawn out discussion about these languages. He's got to speak.
I back up tonight.
There we go. Sorry about that. That quick is working, but.
Well, we'll see.
Okay.
Anyway, thanks for inviting me. I've got to, this is our last talk, right? So if I go like 9 minutes, will that be okay?
I don't know. Is anybody gonna book you? Go ahead.
Before I start, I've got to tell you all, Kristen kept sending me these emails about, you've got a presentation, send it to me on and on. I kept sending them to Emily because I had no idea that I was going to be talking today. Until last week, I got this email, another one from Kristen, and I sent it to Emily like I've been doing for the last month or so, but it had an agenda attached. I looked at the agenda and lo and behold, there I am talking the last speech. So together in this little talk, and what I'm going to talk about, about the metric LiDAR for inland waterways. And just to be clear, so that Rick doesn't get confused, when I say the district,
I was just gonna leave, buddy, just to let you know. Almost out the door.
No,
Nice.
you don't have to leave, Rick. When I say the district, I'm talking about the Southwest Florida Water Management District, not the South Florida Water Management District. I'm from the Southwest Florida Water Management District. I was there for almost 20 years before I retired. Okay. Our inland waterways and everything at the district, the projects that I'm going to talk about, it's unfortunate, but we don't do these out of the goodness of our hearts. There's actually Florida statutes that we are following. The minimum flows and levels is part of Florida Statute 373, which is the Florida statute that made the water management districts in the 1960s. We are obliged to follow FS 373-042 and Florida Administrative Code Rule 4473 for the establishment of minimum flows for our rivers and minimum lake levels for those lakes that are in danger of being drawn down due to pumping first water supply for people. Also, we are under the obligation under the Springs and Aquifers Protection Act of 2016 here in the great state of Florida. So what I'm going to show you, okay, unfortunately, I didn't do this out of the goodness of my heart. I have motivation. I'm not going to go through and talk about a lot of details. I think everybody knows by now what sensors look like. If you don't know what sensors look like, this is what they look like. So I'm not going to go through a whole lot of detail here. But what I am going to do is tell you 4 short stories. And they all deal with inland bathymetry and topobathymetric LiDAR. The first story starts actually way back in 2016 with Kings Bay, and this is a aerial image that of Kings Bay. We're looking south, so the Crystal River flows. We have a, yeah, we do. Crystal River flows out here to the west to that big body of water off the west coast of Florida. You can call it whatever you like. But and like I said, this was one of our first topobathymetric projects. And this is the reason. This is a small aggregation, and that's the biological word for a group of manatees that aren't mating with each other. Those are called pods. You're looking at 108 manatees, and you can see they're all clustered real close to each other. And this is one pod, I'm sorry, one aggregation in Crystal Bay, in Kings Bay of the Crystal River at this time of the year, because they aggregate there for the warm waters. In total, we're looking at about 1,200 animals clumping into less than 20 square miles of bay. Now, if you think about that, each animal is about a ton to a ton and a half, and they're vegetarians. So you've got, give or take, 1,200 animals eating several pounds of, you'll forgive me if I call it seagrass, but it's submerged aquatic vegetation, right? Because these things are vegetarians, and what goes in one end got to come out the other end.
We know.
Right? And we were joking about this the other day, but this is a bottom line truth. What goes in one end comes out the other end, and Kings Bay at this time of the year gets covered with both Lingbia, blue-green algae from the nitrogen, and manatee poop. And of course, this area is all karst, so the manatee poop goes down into the lowest portions of the sinkholes. Somebody's got to clean it up. Well, that's one of the district's jobs. We maintain Kings Bay. So you have to hire people to come and clean up the manatee poop. So it becomes a pretty big problem. We hired Morgan and Eklund to do some profiles and to get an estimate of how much stuff there is that's got to be dredged and removed. Well, you know, if you're doing profiles, we could only afford so many, and we only got a small portion actually mapped. So fortunately, I was able to contract with Javeltex, and I think it was Wilbur who actually flew it for us this year. Did a topobathymetric with a seasmill survey of Kings Bay. So here's the seasmill, and I'm just going to show you a bunch of pretty pictures and tell you the stories behind them. So here's a pretty picture of the seasmill-derived DEM. But the critical thing is that we could determine, and this is what Dewberry did for me. I hired Dewberry to do the analysis on the data. You can clearly see the bottom. You can see the top of an unconsolidated layer. And guess what that unconsolidated layer is, guys?
Poop.
What's that?
Manatee poop.
That would be mostly manatee poop. So now it becomes a simple GIS task, right? All you do is you calculate the surface return from the unconsolidated, the bottom return, and the difference is the volume that you gotta dredge. It became a real simple process to calculate and get a real good estimate of the amount of manatee poop. Story number two. Story number two and story number three are kind of related to each other. These again are some of my favorite projects. Jeff mentioned this one earlier. This is a MFL that we do for the Withlacoochee River. And there are two tribs off the Withlacoochee. And this is the Withlacoochee, not the Withlacoochee, for those of you who are Floridians. The Withlacoochee River flows through Sumter and Hernando County out to that big body of water. But there are two tribs on it. Both are spring-fed trips. Rainbow River flows south from first order spring into the Withlacoochee. And this project was flown by NOAA for us. They did this one with a Regal 880G. And again, this of course is a spring-fed creek, spring-fed trip. And you can see the beautiful bathymetry that we got along the entire river. And this is a 7-mile stretch from the head spring here down to where it comes. With beautiful data. Now, that's not the only thing that we got. With Lacoochee, I'm sorry, the Rainbow River is covered, not entirely, but mostly with giant Vallisneria. And this is emerged aquatic. The giant val is about 1 meter tall, give or take. Everybody knows giant val, right? There's a profile through the giant Vallisneria, and the yellow block, the picture there is a picture from right out there, and that is a survey point that I took, GPS survey, stick on the ground, so you can see that exactly where the ground. This was one of my bathymetric checkpoints. So you can see the ground and you can see the giant val. And when you measure this stuff, it's about just about 1 meter. So instead of mapping the way we were doing on the Rainbow River by quadrat method, I now have a complete coverage of the entire spring run. And I can map. Now, I couldn't tell what it was, of course. We had to go out and ground truth species. But I could tell where vegetation was. I could tell the entire canopy. Another trib, part of the same MFL, is Gum Slough. And this is a slough in Sumter County. And it's right up here. It flows westward into the Withlacoochee. This is just a small portion of it. The USGS, Cara, where are you? Cara, the USGS has 2 gauges on Gum Slough. There's a gauge up at the head spring, which is way up here somewhere. And they have another gauge down at the where it enters into the Withlacoochee. And as far as we knew, or as long as I was at the district for all 20 some odd years, we only knew that there was a head spring. Well, we decided to fly it, and this was done with a sea-smell. Emily did this project for me. And lo and behold, we saw all these little divots, and you can see them here. What are they? Well, you know, we're ecologists, decided to go out. There's 2 of them. Those were undiscovered. These are both second order springs. And if we go back to this picture, there's like 11 that we've now identified. And we've decided to name 4 of them. Danielle Rogers was our district project manager with the Springs group. And we named one after her. I thought was kind of cool. So 2 topobathymetric projects, and you can see how beautiful the data look. Last one is this one's a developing project. This is an MFL that's coming up. MFLs, the minimum floating levels, are reevaluated on a 5-year basis. This one's coming up next year. But curious thing about this one, this is a Weeki River in Hernando County. Everybody knows Weeki mermaids, right? This is they're up here. Is the viewing station. The Weeki River flows, again, it's spring-fed run. It flows directly into that big body of water, Florida. And it's very popular. People like to canoe on it, and they dock their canoes on the banks, and then they do all kinds of recreation, and the banks slope. and they come in, falls into the river because it's all, mucky. And it fills in and then it begins to smell and the people on the river begin to complain. So long and the short of it is, in September of this year, the district decided to vacuum dredge material, some of which was not manatee poop, but other kinds of poop. Decided to vacuum dredge it. 2 days later, Hurricane Milton comes through. So one of the questions that we had was any of this material that was placed in that big body of water to the west of Florida, did any of it come back in? So we flew the river, and this is a preliminary, a quick view. First quick view, but you can see the portion of the river that we flew with Seasma looks absolutely beautiful. Up to Milwaukee Village. The little divots are just low noise that hasn't been filtered out yet. But you can see the entire Milwaukee River. It's just a beautiful spring-fed elevation model. I think that's all I have. Like the speaker before me, though, there are lots of people that contribute to these things. The folks at NOAA, Jennifer and Chris, the folks at, Javeltex, NOAA, Mike and Rudy. Rudy's a native. He's a local here. We flew the plane at my district, and Chris Anastasio, Jim Owens, and at Newberry, Marv, who's no longer with Newberry, but he loved the Manatee Poop Project. And Andrew Rutherford. But thank you very much. And if I can have 1 minute for an advertisement.
No quick F.
Quick advertisement. Okay. I represent National American Society for Photogrammetry and Remote Sensing, ASPRS. I'm the president-elect. Jeff Lovin was one of our ex-presidents. Rick Householder is currently on the board of directors. Several of our people that you've heard from, Cara, Renee, and others, Rick, Jeff, several have done presentations. My community of practice meets twice a year. Everybody's invited. It's free. We meet out at the University of Florida research station, the IFAS research station at Lake Apopka. Our next meeting is on the 8th of May. If you choose to come out, I'll buy you lunch. We pay for lunch for everybody. If you don't want to, we can do it by Zoom. If you'd like, all that we ask is that you register. Registration is free. You need a MyASPRS account, which is also free, which you can make at my.asprs.com. I invite everybody to go there. Everybody, if you want to come out, come and listen. Our keynote speaker, we have a keynote speaker, is Dennis Reardon. If any of you know Dennis, Dennis is the NOAA NGS Florida liaison to NOAA, and he's going to be speaking about the NSRS modernization. Everybody's invited. I hope to see you there. Thank you.
Thank you.
So we're running really late. I mean, overtime. Well, not actually as badly as we thought, but first I think we want to ask if there's any questions. for any
It was just gonna
speaker.
be a question discussion of any of the lightning talks that have gone on, basically.
Comments or whatever you feel like making. Go ahead.
Go ahead, Ray.
I'm curious, Cheryl, Steve, is there a plan for a comment beyond 5 years?
Yes, we have a plan. Whether NOAA has a plan, I'm not sure.
No, NOAA has a plan. Whether or not it's funded is.
Well, that's their plan. Right?
So it's not a closing the book or that?
No. It's, like, for example, at the center at UNH, right? It goes on 5-year chunks and it's been gone on for 20 years, right?
So the intention is to have something perpetual.
Is to.
Good. Glad to hear that.
there any other questions? Anybody online? For any of the lightning talks that we just heard?
Steve?
Oh, sorry, Steve, go ahead.
You know, I thought the talks were great and they all kind of fit together. For somebody who isn't LiDAR, efficient, the last slides where it has all the QR codes and the contact information, those would be really great. Because I'd like to back in touch with a number of the authors. So that would be helpful if you could pull that slides together.
Okay, so just so you know, the chat should be available, but also when I do the report, when I do the report, I'll have all of the links and such probably listed in there at the end. The slides will be included if I'm allowed to share them. But if putting something together quick, if you want that, I can get this to you. Okay, but we will do that.
The other, way I had was, the change analysis issue came up in a number of the talks, and particularly with a forcing function like these last two hurricanes, understanding what's where. There's probably a number of approaches to that. Airborne LiDAR. There's probably some ship and drone based things. There's satellite information. It would be good to actually kind of put that together as a, because like for example, Cheryl had it was basically a newspaper highlight said the missing million cubic yards of sand. And that was an estimate by the local DPW, right? Well, it probably wasn't a great estimate, it was back of envelope, but a million cubic yards is 1 million metric tons of sand, right? So that's a lot. And understanding what goes up on land, what's sort of diffuse offshore, what's longshore, that would be really helpful in terms of kinds of things, right? So it would be neat.
I have a feeling there's going to be a variety of, it tends to be something that researchers pick up, in my experience. And I'm not saying that you should do it. What I'm saying is I guarantee you there are a lot of university, Florida Atlantic University, like Tiffany Briggs's group, Ping Wang's group. And it can be as easy as a LiDAR surface subtraction, or you can make it much more, complex.
It's got to be more complicated than that because, you've got, different grain sizes, for example.
Well, I think what it is you would do that as the LiDAR subtraction as a first pass. And that would give you, a wider perspective. And then you would dig deeper into areas where things were just a little too wacky to explain easily.
I take your point about it being sort of an academic exercise, but it's not really. It's a major practical outcome.
Well, sorry, we're just having this conversation. So after Hurricane Sandy, when I was with the USGS, we did that exactly. And one of the reasons we did it is we wanted to understand before the bulldozers got in there, what the volume of sand was that went into overwash, what the volume of sand was that was missing from the beach so that we knew how much went offshore. And so it was, I can't remember the number at this point, but it was an astounding small amount that actually went inlet in the overwash deposits, like surprisingly small. So, you saw all that sand and you see these pictures of all that sand in the street. That's like 15% of all the sand that was lost. And I'd say your 1 million cubic yards of material is way small.
Question along those lines for Jennifer, because she was talking about the volumetric change analysis, and she showed a slide with these polygons. What are those polygons based on? Jennifer, are you still on?
Yes, she is. Jennifer?
I'm here.
Yeah, this is Jim Flox, USGS. You showed the slide showing the volumetric change analysis using LiDAR, and you show these polygons, and you were calculating volume change within the polygon. Are those just survey blocks, or what do they represent?
Yeah, the polygons are bins that we draw. It's basically a way to chunk up the volume change so that we can look at it kind of in an alongshore sense. But we're doing exactly what Cheryl was describing, is just subtracting the, ever remember which direction it goes. I always have to draw myself a picture, but you know, subtracting the pre from the post and getting erosion and accretion. And then we kind of just segment those volumes alongshore and we compute the volume on the beach. So above mean high water, and then we also do what we call a total volume, which includes whatever bathymetry exists in both the pre and post surveys as well.
So that could be modified to regional, it's the whole barrier island.
Yes, we actually have our an R&D work unit going on at Jalwatex with one of the other research programs that's looking at modernizing volume change, specifically to look at barrier islands and things that move more. So when you have barrier island rollover, it's kind of taken into account. So kind of looking at volumes in a blob sense rather than just kind of chunking things up in a longshore sense.
So we are past time. I don't want to keep people too much longer. I don't know if anyone has any last comments to wrap up. Really appreciate your time, especially people online. I know it's hard to stay paying attention, especially when you're virtual. So I hope that worked for you. Thank all our speakers. And you know, these meetings continue just I think it's just wonderful to keep this community together, establish maybe even a more formal community of practice where there's ways that you can give back to us commentary, you know, where we can have conversations rather than just one way push out information from the great hub that we put together. Do you want any other last remarks?
I think we should get, thanks to everyone. We should get feedback on this and what we were looking at for community of practice, and we'll expect more on that. I think that'll be good to get.
Solicit some feedback. Maybe we'll put out some kind of survey, not one that takes a long time, but you know, something that where we can get some feedback. So we appreciate your time and continued support of FCMaP. Thank you, Christy.
I'm sorry for all the emails, Al. What I'm most impressed with today is that somebody looked at the agenda at some point. Thank you.
If I didn't look at it, I probably wouldn't.
Exactly. Well, I'm gonna go for beer with him for like 30 minutes. Good job, Earl.
I don't think.
Good job.
Yeah, I had a pleasure.
Hey, I'm back.